Diabetes is a lot to take in, especially after diagnosis. The flood of new terms, tech, and lifestyle changes can feel totally overwhelming. It's like being dropped into a game with a complicated tutorial. And you're expected to beat the boss battle on day one. But what if I told you there was a fun and intuitive tutorial available right now to help with diagnosis? Well, a new smartphone app called Level 1 is aiming to be just that, a fun, gamified way to make type 1 diabetes education easier to understand for newly diagnosed patients and their families. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and research, and I am a gamer. So I got super excited when I heard about this app, and I played it myself. Today, I'm joined by Sam Glassenberg, a veteran video game developer and father of a child with type 1. And that's what inspired him to make this game. He created Level 1 to help others navigate the early stages of diabetes management through interactive levels that teach everything from insulin to carb ratios to how exercise and fatty foods affect blood sugar. Healthcare providers and patients are already raving about this app, and now it is available to everyone on the App Store, whether it's Google or Apple. And after playing about 10 levels myself, I can confidently say that I wish I had this app when I was first diagnosed. Keep in mind that this show is not medical advice and is for educational purposes only. Always consult with a physician before making changes to your healthcare. All right, let's get into it. Sam, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So a little thing about me that you may not know is that I almost went to school for video game design at Northeastern, but it was a last minute decision to not, and I'm glad I didn't because then I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But I love video games. I'm a gamer. I'm playing Last of Us Part 1 right now, which I'm really enjoying on my PlayStation Portal. Yeah, gamer to gamer, I want to hear all about the work that you've done. But before we get into Level 1, tell me a little bit about your background and how I guess your background in video game design.
Sure. So I've spent my career in video games. My first job was out of college was at LucasArts. I was hired as an animator. I flew spaceships for cutscene animations in PlayStation 2 Star Wars games. After that, I used to run a game technology team at Microsoft. I built a company that did games for Hollywood movies, Hunger Games, Mission Impossible, Rocky. And then for the last 10 years, I've built a company called Level X, which actually makes video games for doctors.
Very cool. I think what I love about video games so much is that they test you, they push you. You need to use critical thinking to get through puzzles. It's not as relaxing or as simple as watching a movie, right? They put you to the test. So I guess why would you say video games are a good tool for teaching and learning?
They are the best tool for teaching and learning. Humans have evolved to learn this way. Think about it. When you get a phone or anything, you don't read the manual. I don't even think they even come with manuals anymore. You go, I need to play with this, right? Why is this? We have evolved to learn through play. And in the video games industry, we have kind of figured out that neurochemical recipe for exactly what you described. How do you hit the right balance of reward and frustration, challenge and skill to keep you in the flow state and literally maximize the release of neurochemicals in the brain to maximize fun, but also maximize learning. I'm happy to I have a lot of examples, sort of the neuroscience of Angry Birds and things like that.
Yeah,
to sort of explain.
Give us that example. That's a cool one. I love Angry Birds.
Oh yeah. So if you've ever wondered why Angry Birds is so addictive, the game came out 10 years ago. I still see people playing it on airplanes today. We've evolved to play Angry Birds. What do I mean by that? So, Justin, think back to the first time you played Angry Birds, probably a while ago. What happened? Angry Bird hops in the slingshot. You aim at the Tower of Pigs. You fired. What happened the first time you played?
I killed some pigs.
Not the first time. The first time you missed.
Yeah.
You missed. And what happens when you miss? The piggies laugh at you. Why the pig? Why? This is totally gratuitous. Why? This is deliberate. This makes you frustrated. Second bird hops in. You aim a little better. You fire. You get closer to the tower, but you still miss. and you get more frustrated. Third bird, you're like, okay, now I'm starting to get the hang of this. You aim, you fire, and it's glorious. There's explosions and animations, and the pigs go flying, and the music changes. All of this was deliberately designed to trigger a dopamine release in your brain that reinforces those neural connections used on that last successful fire. This is why an hour later you're firing that bird between two narrow obstacles at 50 meters, and why 80 hours later you're still playing the game. Now, we didn't invent this neuromechanic in the games industry. It's existed in the mammalian neuron for tens of millions of years. This is how our ancestors learned how to throw a spear. Miss, frustration, hit, dopamine. Okay, what are the neural connections we used on that last successful throw? We want to make those thicker. We're going to want to use those again. In video games, like what's Angry Birds doing? It's training your brain how to predict the parabolic flight of an Angry Bird. What's SimCity doing? It's training your brain to understand how a city works. What's Level 1 doing? It's training your brain how to manage diabetes.
Yeah. I've played Angry Birds in so many different forms, from iPhone back in maybe that was 2014. And then I played in VR, and I even played in augmented reality with the Magic Leap headset, which was a really cool way to experience it, because it's like you put an Angry Birds game on your table and you're playing Angry Birds in your space, which is cool. Blocks would fall off the table and hit the floor. This was really high-tech stuff. And I actually talked all about that on Justin Tech, which was what I was doing before Diabetech, which was all technology. And it was a lot of fun. And, I love tech. I love gaming. And that's now a more private part of my life, which is nice. It's not my work. I get to do diabetes, which is my work now.
For me, I'm very lucky. It's both.
Yeah, right.
But no, Magic Leap is amazing. We actually back, Level X for doctors. We built a bunch of the launch medical content for Magic Leap and AR Core and AR Kit and a bunch of these things. So we have, you can do spine surgery, on a spine that's floating, and you can actually just do it with the controllers. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, if anyone is interested in seeing, I did a whole 5-part series with Magic Leap and talked about all the cool experiences and apps for it and the technology still holds up. Like, it was very advanced at the time, so it's kind of like now is when it's all kind of happening, especially with the Apple Vision Pro. So I'll throw that in the show notes. Your company, Level X, you design games for doctors. Tell me a little bit about what those games are and who they're for.
So look, what Level X does is, like I said, make games for medical professionals. So if you think imagine we literally have millions of medical professionals playing video games they're earning continuing medical education credit toward renewing their medical license. They play games. We have, when you think about diagnosing rare disease, that's a puzzle game. When you think about managing a complex patient with multiple comorbidities, that's a strategy game. And so we basically bring in the top game developers, designers, artists who've worked on everything from Mortal Kombat to Diner Dash. We team them up with hundreds of physician advisors across every major therapeutic area in medicine to, advance the practice of medicine through play, to use video game tech and video game design to help accelerate the adoption of new techniques, new products. And that's what we do. Now we, with diabetes, have expanded also into games for patients.
Yeah, you told me you had to convince your parent company to let you do this. Tell me why that was so important to you.
So this is the story of how Level 1 came about. In the middle of, I'm halfway into the Level X journeys 5 years ago. My, at the time, 5-year-old daughter was diagnosed with type 1. And the onboarding experience was not great. So on Friday, your life is normal. And then within 24 hours, oh, hey, Sam, you thought your job was running video game companies? Oh, that's your second job.
Yeah.
Your primary job is you're now a pancreas. And you need to inject what is a lethal drug, insulin, into your kid into precise doses, I don't know, a dozen times a day. I call it, like, this one sheet, I call it the guide to not killing your own kid. We're out of the hospital in 48 hours because my wife's a pediatrician. She caught it early. And we're out of the hospital. They give us, here's this thing. It's got scribbled out carb ratios, insulin sensitivity factors, all this guidance on how to pre-bolus. It took me a year, and me and my wife, it took us a year to actually develop that mental model to understand how to manage this disease. Finally, after a year, like, oh, I get it. Yeah, insulin curves and action curves and digestion speeds, and okay, now my brain knows where that curve is going to go. And I was like, well, this is stupid. Like, why should you have to do this? We're learning how to manage diabetes through play, but the play is trial and error on your own kid, or for many other people, it's on themselves. And this is terrible. So we fixed it. I put together a design, and at the time, so LevelX had been acquired by a major medical device company, and called Brain Lab. They do all the cool like neurosurgery hardware and software, but they also do a lot of philanthropic efforts in healthcare worldwide. And I was like, hey, this is super important to me. I want to get this game done, and they funded it to their credit, and so we built it and launched it 2 weeks ago.
This episode is sponsored by Omnipod. As someone with T1D and with an incredibly active lifestyle, it's important for me not to get tied up, especially with tubes on my insulin pump. I love to go swimming, lift weights, and play kickball with friends. And with Omnipod 5, I never have to worry about tubes getting in the way. Plus, not having to disconnect helps me to stay in range during all of my favorite physical activities. That includes sexy time too. See if you're eligible for a 30-day trial by visiting omnipod.com/diabetic. On there, you'll see full safety and risk information and trial terms. That's omnipod.com/diabetic. So I can imagine as a parent, like, it must be really stressful to have to learn all of this new information when your child's diagnosed and have to manage their pancreas. I mean, for me, it was so overwhelming. It really did take that full year to feel like I got all of these different areas of diabetes down. And I've always looked at my diabetes as a really annoying game. Like, it really is a game of like, add a little of this, reduce a little of this to keep you in this range, like Flappy Bird, right?
Yeah.
Or this helicopter game I used to play, which was essentially Flappy Bird. And I can just imagine someone like you were immediately, as you were taking all this information, like gamifying it in your brain a little bit. Tell me a little bit about these early days of when you were doing this, how you were thinking about all of this. I mean, I'm sure it was so stressful, but like, were you already kind of toying around with things like, oh, this is like gamifying it in your head?
So not yet. At the very beginning, what's interesting is, so first off, I hardly remember the beginning because you don't sleep much when you're the parent. But what I did was I actually wrote it down, and I wrote a little bit of a diary, because what was interesting was not like thinking about it from the perspective of like, how would I make a game to solve this? I wasn't there yet. But what was interesting for me is, coming from video games, we've gotten extremely good at, there are all these rules around video game design. How do you make a game fun? How do you bring people into a video game and introduce them to the game such that, because obviously there's thousands of games launching in the App Store like every month. So how do you make it so your game stands out? So people start playing it and immediately they start having a good time and they get into it and it's engaging, and there's all this neuroscience and design to do this. What I realized was the experience of type 1 diabetes takes all of those rules around how to make a fun, enthralling, captivating video game and flips them all on their head to make the most punishing experience possible. Little things like, there's rules in video games. You always want to give the player an early win. So you notice when you play a new game, usually there's some little thing you do and it's like, oh, congratulations, you just beat a boss. There's some early win. Diabetes, the exact opposite. Also in video games, it's very important the player understands what they're being scored on and what that score means. So type 1 diabetes, you start already, you're losing. If you're, luckily we weren't in DKA, but like, blood sugar is 550. You don't even know what that means. Like hemoglobin A1C, you don't know what that means. All you know is you have a score. Your score is bad, and the score is really important for gameplay. And then from there, it's just all downhill. Like whether it's the instruction manual, which is terrible, whether it's the, all the different, we call the loops of finger pokes and injections, and it's all, So I actually wrote a blog that I, eventually posted called worstgameever.org that literally just goes through the sort of day by day as a game, from a game design perspective on why the onboarding experience is terrible. I wrote it because it was therapeutic for me, but a lot of other parents have been reading it like early on, and they're just like, well, it's great to know that others suffer like we do.
Yeah. I'm a pretty competitive person, not a sore loser, but I like to get super competitive about games. And I like games where there's like real strategy to being good at it. And
Yes.
diabetes, yes, there's strategy. Yes, there's different features and modes you can turn on and adjustments and preparation you can do. But no matter how good you are at the game of diabetes, it will always school you
Yep.
in a way you don't expect. You cannot, perfection's impossible. It just is. Because we move and we eat and we breathe,
I was saying like doing what there was some meme like doing the same thing, eating the exact same thing and doing the exact same thing for 3 days and getting completely different results. That's what type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
And so in video games, that breaks the rules because in video games, you always want the player to know how their actions correlate to their score in the game. And you want it to be consistent. And diabetes is not that. So even when we designed level 1, like one thing that was very important is you can 3-star any level without a perfect score, without being in range the whole time. Because it's very important that first few days to really internalize like perfection is impossible. Don't try it. If you try it, you will actually just stress yourself out because you can't. As long as you're within range, 90% of the time, you can 3-star every level in level 1. Because our whole thing is do not like, how do we literally create a game that trains your brain? Like, no, you don't need to be perfect. Relax.
So it's a really pretty looking game. I know that you were inspired by different art types of games. Tell me a little bit about, the inspiration behind the style of the game and what the game style is.
Yep. So there's the mechanics and the visuals. The mechanics, we call like the gameplay, super simple. You play the whole game just with one thumb. One-handed, one thumb. We don't want you to have to spend an hour learning how to play the game. We want you to know how to play the game intuitively and spend your time learning how to manage diabetes. The game is fundamentally a particle puzzle. It's a particle game. If you've ever played Feed Me Oil, Where's My Water, World of Goo, like these games are played by a billion people. They're super fun. You have thousands of particles on screen that interact in interesting ways. It's gorgeous. Our brain delights in it. That's why we love playing with sand, and that's why humans love playing with water and magnetic sand and things, because we delight in complex particle interactions. So the game is just gorgeous. And what you're doing is in the game, it's also a rhythm game. So if you're familiar with Guitar Hero is that genre. So what is dosing diabetes? It's, making sure to time your doses with whatever's going on with the food, with your current blood glucose level. And so the game is just like, it's super simple to play. All you're doing is tapping with your thumb, dosing insulin. Once in a while, if you go low, you move your thumb a centimeter to the left and you dose some juice. And the game just represents everything. So there's 60 levels. There's food that's just moving in on a conveyor belt, dropping into your digestive system, getting broken down to these gorgeous glucose particles. You inject insulin, it comes in off the side, activates the cells, and just sucks in the glucose. It's gorgeous. It's captivating. The visual style is super light and casual, kind of think Candy Crush, because we really wanted to make something that was going to be, a visual style. Like everyone plays Candy Crush. So we picked visual styles that are like very casual, very friendly. You're usually already under a lot of stress when you're trying to learn about this. So the whole theme is just the soundtrack is very zen, and you just play the game for 2 hours and you've mastered every major topic that you need for the first 6 months of MDI.
Yeah, it's a really pretty looking game and somewhat relaxing playing it. Like you can take in all of this information and enjoy yourself and not feel like too stressed. Sam, so during development, how were you making sure that what you were doing was correct? Like, were you working with other people, doctors, HCPs, to play levels and things like that to make sure that the information you were putting out was correct?
Yes. So this is Level X. This is what we do all the time, right? So we have a stable. We work with hundreds of physician advisors and contributors. We have biomedical engineers and MDs on staff. So, because obviously you're making games for doctors, it's got to be. So we know how to make really games that are accurate and that are peer reviewed and so forth. We started out, with obviously all the publications, the peer reviewed papers around, insulin action curves and glucose and, all the glucodynamics. So it's modeled after real science. But then, of course, we ran a beta for, I think, over around a year, where we had hundreds of endocrinologists, diabetes educators, camp counselors, newly diagnosed parents, everybody, and we're just internalizing all the feedback on the game, just like you would in any game. Make sure it's balanced, but also make sure that it's not only like medically accurate in terms of the glucose behavior, fine, got it, but even just making sure that like all the messaging and all the we weren't doing anything that might sort of nudge somebody in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I can imagine there are things you could say that could hurt someone, if it's said the wrong way.
Yeah, or even just subtly, like one of the things I remember in the game, we had for a while, like really slow digesting foods. We had a level where it taught you how to do multiple injections. Like with a pump, you might, have multiple boluses, or, you might actually do an injection later if you have a really slow digesting food. And the feedback that we got from endos was, yes, it's correct, but such a small percentage of the population will actually ever do that. Don't even try. Like, it's too much for people. And we pulled those levels out.
Yeah, so I've played this game. I played at least the first 10 levels, and I plan to play through all of them because I'm really curious to see myself how each level changes. And there's some interesting levels that I do want to get into with you to just hear more about them, and so that everyone can hear too. But who is this game for? Like, obviously, when I was playing it, I was like, I know a lot of this, but I was only really in the first 10 levels. I see how complex this is getting. Who do you see using this? Is this someone who, a parent, a person with diabetes who is just diagnosed, or could this even be for people that are like, I want to brush up on this, or things that maybe people never even learned, maybe in there?
Yes and yes. So the primary audience is the newly diagnosed and their caregivers, because that was my personal experience. What we're seeing over time is that actually the audience for this is much bigger. So the design point again is, the newly diagnosed and their caregivers, and you can even see that like the reading level is as low as possible to just make it so the broadest audience can play. I needed it because camp counselors, like, I don't let babysitters babysit my daughter unless they've played at least through level 10. There's just
that's interesting. That's very cool.
It takes a village, right? Think of all the people that need to know how to manage this disease, grandparents and camp counselors and all. So it's for all of them. But what we're also starting to realize is the audience is even bigger than that. So you can just look at the comments and feedback. People are like, I've had this disease for 5 years and I learned like something I didn't know in level 20. Especially things like how ketones work and exercise. Like, there's a bunch of, it gets fairly complex. And the other thing that we've also seen is the importance actually of educating medical professionals. There's a huge percentage, like half of diabetics in this country are managed, like they're in a rural environment. Like they don't have it. There's no endo. They're managed by primary care. Anesthesiologists are putting patients under who are on pumps. And there are like all of these doctors that actually, and nurses and other things that might not be endos, but actually need to understand this disease. So we've actually been getting pressure. Hey, can we get this certified for CME credit? So doctors can get CME credit toward renewing their medical license from playing level 1.
Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. Tell me about when you open up this app, what are the mechanics? What is the player doing? What are they seeing and what are they controlling?
So the game is super simple. You come in and there's a nurse who's the non-player character, the NPC, and she just talks you through everything. The first step is actually the first experience you usually have with diabetes, which is you come in and you're high, and you can see the CGM view at the top, and she goes, "You're high. We got to dose insulin to bring you down." And all you do is it shows you exactly how to do it. You take your thumb and you just tap there's an insulin needle at the bottom of the screen. You tap it, drag over, I think to like 2 units or something, goes in. You watch the insulin go in, you watch it activate the cells, you watch the glucose get sucked in, and it's like, great, now you just learned how to dose insulin. Okay, let's go from here. So she starts, now you have to deal with a few highs and how to correct, then food starts appearing, then you have to start learning about pre-bolusing. Initially, the foods just tell you, for this, food you're going to need right now a unit of insulin or 2 units of insulin, just a little tag above the food. But eventually that goes away and it just shows you the carb count, and you have the carb ratio in the top of the screen, or you start with a carb ratio of 10. It's like, now you got to divide by 10 to figure out how many units. You go. Now, later on in the game, the carb ratio changes throughout the day. So you have to keep an eye on it. You have to change what you're dividing by. So the whole time this is happening, but your interface never changes. All you're doing is just tapping the phone, dragging the insulin pen. It's just you're literally just on the phone with your thumb, twist the insulin pen, dose.
Wow, that gets me even more excited about playing through all of it too, and seeing how the levels progress. Let's talk about some of the levels. I scrolled through into future chapters of the game that I haven't gotten to yet, so I want to hear more about them. Let's start with sick days.
Yeah.
Tell me about what that chapter is bringing into the game.
Ketones. So this was confounding for me the first time, right? Because you're like, well, blood sugar is normal, but that's because you're not eating. And when you're sick, right, your blood sugar is often normal, you're not eating, and what's happening is ketones are still forming in your bloodstream. So you can still start throwing up, you can have high ketone levels, you can even go into DKA with being actually in range or fairly close to range. And so what we do is we present a scenario where there's no food coming in the conveyor belt. You're not eating, you're sick. And ketones are forming. And so you have to we don't change the interface. Now you still have to play with those 2 buttons, juice and insulin, but you have to keep introducing juice and insulin into the system because you need that insulin in the system to break up the ketones that start forming. And then, of course, there's a giant yellow vortex that appears and sucks all the ketones out because you pee them out.
And so now what about fast food?
Oh, fast food is just training your brain on how to do. So we've introduced carb counting, we've introduced carb ratios, we've introduced like a bunch of different concepts. Fast food is just training your brain how to do that math quickly.
Well, does it introduce like glycemic index and how that changes? Because I think that's something a lot of people don't fully understand, is the difference between a cheeseburger and an apple and the way it will affect you at different times. Does the fast food address longer times to wait, for it to go into the bloodstream?
Yes. So different foods you see, it shows you they digest at different speeds. And we actually visualize that. So you'll notice like when there's juice or an apple, it just kind of falls. The glucose, those like glucose particles, the sugar particles just fall through the gears. And then when you have a slow digesting food like a cheeseburger, it's it's breaking up very, very slowly. And so that helps your brain develop this mental model of like, oh, I really need to think about that insulin curve and how that's going to interact with the food that I'm eating.
Yeah. What I love so much about all these different chapters addressing different aspects of diabetes is that when you're first diagnosed, when you're a parent who has a kid who's diagnosed, you don't have enough time to learn in that once every other week, once every week, 30-minute appointment you have with a diabetes educator. It's simply impossible to soak in all that information and to take it all in and like apply it fully, because it's just all so new to you. So the idea that you could just lay down, play this game, see visually how different foods and insulin and mistakes you may make in the game, whatever, affect the glucose is just, I could see it being so helpful for people. And it would have been very helpful for me. It was a very overwhelming time, early diagnosis especially.
That's a great example. I mean, think about that, right? The first time you eat pizza or some food that you're like, this seems carby, and it's got 80 carbs of pizza, you dose, put all that insulin in up front, and you watch just 3 hours later, you're crashing. And you're like, what happens? Like, what's going on? And then you drink a bunch of juice, and then you shoot up. You're like, what was going on? Now in the game, you understand exactly what's happening and why.
Tell me about some of these people who have played the app. I know that you said that there was one family member that was like still at the hospital playing it.
It wasn't my family member, but it was so.
Yeah.
So first off, throughout the beta, the reactions that we would get, especially from like diabetes educators and endocrinologists, was, why haven't you launched this already? Like, this beta's been going on for months. We need this. Just get it in the app store.
Yeah.
Like, get it in the app store. What's wrong with you? We even had a few people that like we had to take off of the beta because they were sharing it with their patients when they weren't supposed to. And so we're like, all right, we got to get this out the door. Since we've gotten out the door, the reaction has been just overwhelming. Everything from, I've had this disease for 5 years and I, learned something new just from a few minutes of gameplay, to my 12-year-old was just diagnosed 2 hours ago. We're playing the game in the emergency room. So the reaction has just been like phenomenally heartwarming, and, I just feel guilty we didn't get it out the door sooner.
Well, how does that feel?
Incredibly gratifying that we have now that from now on, no parent or newly diagnosed diabetic has to go through that like terrible onboarding experience that all of us did, that lasted a year of just not knowing what you're doing, feeling a total lack of confidence, high stress, high anxiety, and knowing that you're getting the hang of it, but the way you're getting the hang of it is through trial and error on yourself or your own kid. Knowing that that is no longer necessary is, for me, wonderful. The next step is just making sure people know about it.
And that's why you're on this show. And that's why I hope listeners that hear of a family member that was just diagnosed, maybe they are someone who was just diagnosed, so that they can play it, they can share it, and things like that. Does this game have some sort of, or did it need some sort of certification to be considered like is it considered like a diabetes education app? Like what kind of goes in there? What are Apple's and Google's, app store policies for things like this?
Yeah, we've launched a lot of medical content in the app stores, so we're deeply familiar with those policies. And they do check to make sure that, things are, they have certain terms for it, but like things are medically accurate, and that the studies backing it are peer reviewed, and that it comes from a reliable medical organization. So that's par for the course. And the other really important thing is the game is free. This is a passion project. This is not something like, there are no microtransactions or in-app purchases or hidden subscriptions or anything. The game is totally free, no catch.
So you're telling me no one can
this
pay
available for everybody.
No one can pay an extra $6 and get some stem cell therapy and get some working beta cells?
No. Yeah, no extra juice box for $5. Like, none of that. No. There's a population in America and the rest of the world that's underserved. And whereas, my daughter, if you're a well-managed type 1 diabetic, your life expectancy is actually longer than the average life expectancy for an American. Because you're managing your diet. Or if you are poorly managed, the situation is far, far, far worse. And so in underserved communities where people don't know how to manage this disease, they're innumerate, that lack of knowledge contributes to a situation where people are blind or on dialysis in their 30s. And so one of the things I'm hopeful about is not just getting this in the hands of, the folks that would eventually figure this out, but the folks that otherwise might not.
I mean, that's why I started doing what I do. I realized early on when I first engaged with this community and saw how powerful social media was for crowdsourcing information and educating and learning, that pushed me to keep making videos about my experiences, the things I was learning from these diabetes educator appointments, and just giving that out to everyone. So, and to be able to use my skills of interviewing, producing, directing, video editing for the common good. It's just made me so passionate. And I can only imagine that you feel similarly. How has it felt for you to be able to use this skill that you've been working on for years, your 9 to 5, and be able to apply that to something so personal?
This is, I think, one of the phenomenal things about the diabetes community whether it's like the folks who made DIY Loop or folks like yourself that like has all this experience, sharing information about technology and now doing that for the diabetes community or video game design and development. We see this throughout the diabetes community, whether people know how to fundraise, whether they know how to code, whether they know how to do art, whether they know how to run. Like people are using their, event organizing, like people are using their skills and their craft, and they're bringing it to bear, not only to help, their family, but to really help the entire global T1D community.
Where is this available currently? Where can people download it? And like what languages, what countries, what's that looking like right now? And what do you hope for?
So the game's available for free in the iOS App Store and Google Play. Just search for, Level 1 Diabetes, Level 1, a diabetes game. You can go to playlevel1.com. That's level 1, ONE spelled out. And you can learn more about the game. And of course, there are download links there. Right now, the game is only available in English and it's only available in US units. We've been getting a lot of feedback about how much people want this game in European units as well as in other languages. So we're just trying to figure out how we can make that happen as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can imagine so many people around the world could benefit from this. So, and I can imagine it's also like a lot of work to translate and get it on all the app stores. But I'm glad to hear that it's on Android and iPhone, which is going to allow everyone to hear it, to get it at least. Will there be a level 2? I know you're not making money on this, and this is a passion project, so no pressure there. But we're obviously celebrating the release of this game. But is that something that's on your mind? Do you have a vision for what level 2 could be?
You mean expanding level 1 or expanding it to type 2 diabetes?
Well, you tell me.
So the answer is both. Level X has already actually done a bunch of medical professional education around type 2 diabetes, and we built some games to help train doctors. So type 2 diabetes is something we're already into. With adapting the level, like one could take the mechanics of level 1 and adapt it to type 2 diabetes. Obviously the management is a little bit different, but there's still some of the same concepts you really need to develop that mental model for. So there's that. And we've had interest in it. We're exploring it. The other is just expansions on level 1. A lot of the feedback that we've been getting is because level 1 just lets you try stuff in a safe, fun, no consequence environment. There's a lot of other things that people want to be able to play with. They want to be able to play with pumps. They want to be able to play with closed loop systems. They want to be able to do it without having to make the investment of time and money and effort and stress to go and put something on their body and then figure out how to use it. So we've been exploring ways that we can incorporate that into the game.
Yeah, I could easily see a technology focus on a future iteration. And then beyond that, I could even see how these companies, Medtronic, Insulet, Tandem, all of these companies would be interested in their own, 10-level chapter or beyond that are really focusing on their features and being able to turn on, when should you turn on activity feature and things like this, like the ability for people to learn about the tech that they're using, would just be a whole other step. But that doesn't mean that this game, wouldn't be helpful, because this gets down to all of those basics that are so integral in understanding your diabetes, food, exercise, and applying all of that to the technology, right? I just see that, I see that extra level, which would be pretty awesome.
And that's the beauty of mobile games. We can update them and just add levels later. So
I want to end with this, and it can't be your game. What is your favorite game ever, and why?
Oh my gosh, my favorite game ever? Oh, that's a tough one.
I was trying to think of an answer myself, and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
I've got a list of them.
I can tell you, what I'm right now. I'm addicted to World of Goo 2, which came out 2 weeks ago, because the original game was awesome. I love particle puzzles.
I've played World of Goo.
It's so fun. The sequel just came out. I'm having a great time with it. Teardown. So the team I used to run at Microsoft was like focused. It was the DirectX graphics team. It was focused on pushing the cutting edge of video game graphics. So I love like big open world, graphically intensive games. Even games like Crysis, even Grand Theft Auto, like games where you're playing in these massive open worlds. I love Watch Dogs because it also recreates the city of Chicago. I mean, these are games that are older, but I love these sort of like open world environments or games where you can just interact with anything. So there's a game Teardown where you can just think about it like Minecraft, but all the voxels are really tiny and it's all physics. You can destroy anything, make anything, blow up anything, build anything. I love those games.
Yeah. And my favorite game probably hands down would be Super Smash Brothers. Nintendo fan. And it's just a fun party game. I love playing with people.
I mean, go like, okay, say like Mario Kart and Mario 64.
So good. So good.
I mean, you can't go wrong with those. Those are fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on. I'm very excited for people who are listening to download this, to share this, and for all those people who are feeling lost to have this accessible thing that they can download on their phones and just start learning some pretty stressful and complex stuff. So thanks for making this app and for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Level 1 is available on the App Store, whether it's Google Play or Apple. You can go download it now and spread the word about this app. Help make other people's diagnosis journey easier, or their parents for that matter. Thank you for listening. New episodes of this podcast are every Monday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube in video form. I'm Justin, and I'll talk you later.